Hello, this is the first video in a series of videos where I try to learn Advanced Squad Leader. I'm starting with the starter kits for Advanced Squad Leader, which are intended to learn the system. This is starter kit 1, and I'm setting up scenario S1, Retaking Vierville. Retaking Vierville involves the town of Vierville, which you can see here, which is composed of stone buildings. The Germans are going to be attacking the town, trying to take it back from the Americans. You can see the Americans here in the town along a road. The Germans win if they can get troops into those buildings, and basically at the end of the scenario, if they have any unbroken troops in those buildings that aren't engaged in a melee, they win. So the Americans win by either keeping the Germans out of those buildings or making sure if they're in there, they're broken or engaged in close combat. As I'm doing these series, I'm not necessarily going to go into detail about the rules, but I might as well explain a little bit as I hit each section, just for any other people that are trying to learn. The basics of units are important. So this unit here that has a 3-man silhouette, that is a squad. A squad's composed of about 10 men. Up here is a 2-man silhouette. The men are standing. That is a half squad. This is another silhouette with a single man. That is a leader, or also called a single man counter because there's only a single man there. In full ASL, there's other kinds of single man counters, but in the starter kits, only leaders. The squads and half squads have 3 values along the bottom. The first one is their firepower. That's how much lead they throw out when they're firing. It basically reflects the kinds of weapons they have. The second number is their range. That's how many hexes they can throw that lead out. It's also based on the kinds of weapons they have, but also their training. They can actually fire up to double their range, but anything beyond normal range, which in this case is 4 hexes, would be at half firepower. So if they were to fire out to 5 hexes, for example, which is 1 beyond their normal range, we would half this 7 firepower to 3.5 and round down to 3. So their firepower would be 3. This third number is their morale. That is how well they can withstand the trials of battle. The E in this corner indicates their quality rating. They're elite. This half squad is the same, also elite. There's a few other tidbits about these guys, but I will hold off until I actually need to use them before explaining them. Leaders are important in that they support their troops, make them fight better, make them recover from the trials of battle. Their first number on the left here is their morale, just like the troops have, how well they can withstand battle. The right number is their leadership ability. In this case, it's a -1, and that applies to die rolls. So -1 is actually a good modifier because, as far as I know, just about every roll you want a low number in this game. We'll find out how these things interact as we play the scenario. For setup, the Americans set up first and then the Germans move. I've gone ahead and set up a full squad here with this leader. You can see on the map, I know the Germans are going to be coming from the west and there's a bunch of open ground there, so I figure I'll put my best stack there. The rest of the guys I sort of spread out across the road. These guys here can kind of see this way, and since the Germans will also be coming from the east, that might be helpful as well. So momentarily we will start the German turn. Okay, the Germans start their turn now. Advanced Squad Leader has a structured turn where you go through a series of phases, and the first phase is the rally phase. You rally units, fix weapons, and so on, but those aren't available at this time because the game is just starting. But another thing you do is you bring on your reinforcements. And so the Germans start with reinforcements from the west and east as their initial attack. So over here we can see I've positioned one set of their reinforcements. These are second line quality infantry. They're 447s, so they're not as good as the American 747s. And they have a leader that has no leadership modifier. They'll be coming from the west. The other packet of reinforcements will be coming from the east. These are first line infantry, so they're better. Their leader has a -1 modifier. They're 467 infantry, so a little better than the second line, but still not as good as the Americans, though they can fire farther than the Americans with a 6 range. When they're coming on from the west or east edge of the map, they can pick any aspect of that edge. So you can see there are many choices here. So we'll see how this pans out. After the rally phase is the prep fire phase. In that phase, the attacker can fire their units at the enemy, but those units that fire cannot move. Since no one's on the board, they can't really prep fire. So that phase is over then, and we're going into the movement phase. The movement phase is where the attacker can move, and the defender can fire at the advancing attacker as they move within certain rules. So maybe we'll start with these first line infantry, and I will try to decide what I want to do here. Since the Germans need to be in these buildings and in good order at the end of the scenario to win, I think it's important that I rush someone into this building. Because if the Americans get in there first, it's going to be much harder to get in. The terrain, especially buildings, gives a significant advantage to the defender. So if the Americans get in there, it's just going to be so tough for the Germans to get in. Little thing about movement, there's no movement printed on these units. Squads move at they have 4 movement factors that they spend on various terrain. Leaders have 6 movement factors. So if I want to move these guys in and try to get them into here on their first turn, I'm going to have to be a little bit clever. I need to take into account that the enemy can fire on me. So if I look over here, this American has a decent area of view to the east. If I follow this hex edge as sort of their line of sight, you can see over to here. The building blocks the line of sight here, but you can kind of see, they might be able to see all the way up to here maybe. Likewise, this building blocks line of sight, but they could probably see over here. So the sort of this pie wedge of danger here. Also, when spending movement factors while moving, clear and road areas take 1 movement factor. So they'll be like 1, 2, 3, 4. Wheat, when in season, and this wheat is in season, takes 1.5 movement factors. So it would be 3 points just to go through 2 spaces. Buildings take 2 movement points. Woods take 2 movement points. So really, I cannot really move through here. It'll be too slow, and I'll be taking fire. So instead, I think I want to come up this road, and I'm pretty sure I can get into that building. Another little issue is when I go into that building, this unit here has line of sight along this edge between these 2 buildings into here. So as soon as I move in, it could fire on my German units. But there's a way to avoid that. If I can put a German unit adjacent to the building, it can move in without being fired upon. Later in the turn, there's a phase called the advance phase, and that's where all attacking units can move 1 space and cannot be fired upon. So instead of having to get into here, I can just move them adjacent and then move them in. As I said, they have 4 movement factors, so just running in is not going to cut it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm a little too far away, right? When moving on a road, if you stay on the road the entire time, you get an extra movement point. But that won't help here because there's a bend in the road that sort of absorbs it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another thing I can do is declare double time movement. that exhausts the unit doing the double time. That's an exhaustion counter. But it gives you 2 extra movement points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would work. An exhaustion counter basically makes it so you can't do double time a second turn in a row, and has some also negative modifiers. So, but that will work to get over there. But I do have one more option that's even better. When a leader stacks with a squad, or one or more squads, it also gives them 2 movement points bonus. So that's just as good as double timing without the exhaustion. So that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to have the leader take 2 squads with him. You can actually stack up to 3 squads and 3 leaders in a space. So this leader is going to take 2 squads and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they'll advance in during the advance phase. I have another squad available though from this platoon. And instead of having him go for those buildings, I'm going to have him interdict enemy reinforcements. The Americans' reinforcements were going to come in dribs and drabs from the north. We don't use the entire map for this scenario, so that red line is the north edge for purposes of the scenario. There's a decent amount of open terrain, or at least sort of wheat terrain, that would be good for me to put someone up there, and they can put fire down as the Americans come down those roads to help their comrades. So I think I'm just going to have this guy come in using normal movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the advance phase, he can pick one of these buildings to go in and help interdict Americans trying to come down here to help their friends. On future turns, German reinforcements will be coming from the east. And so by him blocking that, it'll help them get in, perhaps overwhelm the Americans that are already in the town. Let's go take a look at those second line infantry that are coming on the board. I could do something similar and try to rush them in here. One issue, though, is that there's a lot of line of sight of these Americans into those buildings. You can look along this hex spine to here, these 2 along this hex spine or through this hex. So that might end up putting a little too much pain on whoever goes in there. So instead, I think I'm going to sort of get near the building, and over the course of a turn or 2, just slowly work my way up to it. So these guys, I think I want them to go here so they can cover this open ground. They'll probably force this guy to go away because he doesn't want to walk down here and get fired on his turn, and they can see this building. So I think they'll go 1, 2, 3, and then the advance phase go into here. He could have come right in here, 1, 2, 3, but he up here could fire on him and potentially kill him. The rest of the guys, I think I want to get them into one of these buildings here. I think I'll do that. I should mention the Americans could be firing on these units as they move. The ones that came in on this road up here, there's this very slight chance that this American here could see him up here. So I'm playing both sides, and as I was moving, I was thinking, well, this wheat field will degrade the attack. It's out of normal range. Probably don't want to waste a shot, because as soon as you waste a shot, you become a little bit limited. As the defender during the movement phase, you get 1 full strength shot, and then 1 half strength shot within certain restrictions, and after that your shots during the enemy movement are very restricted. So I want to save his firing for something good, which might not materialize. Likewise, these guys, very slight chance they can see this guy here when he moved into the building. Not going to take the shot though. So now for these other guys, I think I'm going to do what I did earlier, and that is stack the leader with 2 of them. I did read online that stacking is not necessarily the best thing to do, because One successful shot requires all the units to potentially suffer losses or to potentially break. So anyway, we have 6 movement factors. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty sure no one can see them, but I'm going to move them into here. 5, 6. So that used up all their movement. But I believe, as the American, I'm going to have these guys react because it looks like they can see them. Let me prove I can see them. I'm going to reveal the center dots of these locations. Get a little line of thread. I'm looking at it from above. And from dot to dot, the Americans can see the Germans moving into that building. And the line traces through one orchard. It might not look like that from the angle of the camera, but that's what it is. So the Americans are going to fire. There's going to be a few modifiers on this. The Germans are in a stone building, so that's going to be +3 to the die roll. That's a pretty significant modifier in favor of the defender. Tracing through an orchard is called a hindrance, in that you can see through it, you can shoot through it, but for every hindrance you fire through, you have to add 1 to the die roll. So that's really a +4 based on defender terrain. Another modifier is that these guys were moving without using assault movement. Assault movement's a kind of movement where you expend, you can only move 1 space. You declare you're going to do assault movement, you move 1 space, and if you didn't use all your movement factors, you're using assault movement. That's basically carefully moving up towards a target. If you're using that when you're moving, things are good. If you're not using it, you get a -1 when someone shoots at you. So I'm going to go ahead and have these guys fire. Rolling 2 dice. Ooh, it's a good shot. Low numbers are good. So these Americans fired, so I'm going to mark them that they've fired their first shot with the first fire counter. And then we're going to go see what happened. I think I might, for this first attack of the series, I will show what happens as far as the infantry fire table. This is the infantry fire table. So the Americans had a 7 firepower. So we go to the top of the chart and we find the 7. Well, there isn't one. So there's an 8 and a 6, so we have to take the smaller number, 6. We rolled a 4, so we cross-reference to here. But then we have to apply some modifiers. There's +3 for the stone building, +1 for the orchard, -1 for not using assault movement. So that is a normal morale check, NMC. So that means those Germans might break. So let's go see how they handle this. I'm going to sort of unravel the stack of Germans here so we can do them in order. They have to make a morale check. Remember, they have a morale, so all 3 of them have a morale of 7. So they have to roll 2 dice and roll less than or equal to their morale to avoid breaking. You always do leaders first, so let's do the leader. He rolled a 5, so he's okay. Now if that leader had a leadership modifier, which he doesn't because it's 0, but if it's a, let's say a -1, for the people he's leading, these other 2 squads, they can use his leadership modifier during this roll. But since he's a -0, no bonus. Here's the first squad. That's a 10. That is really not good. So if you suffer a morale check above your morale, then you break. If you suffer it by a very wide margin, as determined by the scenario, and the margin here is greater than 3 above, so in other words, if it was 11 or more, the modified die roll, he would actually degrade in quality, and he would convert from a second line infantry probably to like a conscript level of infantry. It sort of represents maybe they're, have wounded troops that are sort of holding them back or need attention, or they're frazzled. But anyway, he just barely made it without degrading in quality, but he did break. So we'll flip him over to his broken side. So from the depiction there of a bunch of guys laying around with one sort of holding his head, these guys are out of the battle. They are terrified or running or hiding in a cellar. Try to get them back into the battle, but right now they are out of the battle and partly out of our control. And right when a unit breaks from enemy fire, they become desperate. This is a desperation morale token, and it has a +4 die roll modifier for when trying to rally them, basically to try to get them back into fighting shape. But we'll see how that goes in a bit. So the next squad has to suffer the morale check as well. An 8. Same thing, it breaks. So this is really bad for the Germans. So we'll go ahead and stack these up. The leader goes on top because it's not broken. Also, the Americans fired with 7 firepower. And so that you can sort of imagine over the course of the battle, there's a bunch of bullets flying through that location. So we need to represent that there, even though the die roll is over, the bullets are still flying. Think of it as there's an ongoing battle. So we take half the firepower and then find the what's called a residual firepower marker that is as close to that as possible. And that's the 2. Always picking a lower number than a higher number when your firepower falls between 2. So if another unit moves into there, even if no one fires on them, they will take a 2 firepower attack. Since the Germans used 2 movement points to enter that building, not just 1, the Americans can fire again. The reason is the defender during the enemy movement phase can fire once per movement point, or movement factor I should say, that is expended. So if he fired again, it would be his second shot, so it would be at half firepower. And then he'd be really restricted to making further shots. From that point on, he would only be allowed to shoot if someone becomes adjacent to him. Since all the Germans moved, he might as well take the shot though. So while rolling that, which was also a devastating roll, I realized I missed a rule. So the last roll was, I rolled doubles. So it was a roll of 4 and it was 2-2. So I'm going to unravel this. So doubles, when you fire, cause the firing units to cower. When they cower, you have to use 1 column to the left on the infantry fire table. And so if I look at that, it was not a normal morale check for the Germans. So the Germans are going to be saved here after all. Like I said, I'm learning the game and probably going to make mistakes. So if I use all the rolls that they rolled, they're still going to have a negative effect. So what it was, instead of a normal morale check, it was a pin task check. And a pin task check just checks to see if you're pinned as opposed to broken. Sort of, you're held up by the enemy fire. So these guys are no longer broken based on that. Instead, they're pinned. The leader's not pinned. And they do have the same residual firepower. Okay, so that fiasco of mine is resolved. So these guys just fired with another devastating shot, but it's also doubles. I should point out, if there was a leader stacked to these guys, they would not cower. But it's another doubles, there's no leader, they're going to cower again. But that is a great shot. Their firepower is actually 3.5, rounded down to 3 because it's their second shot. I'm looking up that on the 2 column because there is no 3 column. A 2 on there is devastating, but then I have to add 1, 2, 3 for the building, another one for the orchard, -1 because they're moving, and then I almost did it again. I need to shift the column to the left. That's the 1 column because they're cowering. That's another pin task check. So big deal. I'm just going to roll for the leader because the other guys are already pinned. He is not pinned. He's good. No need to adjust residual firepower because you don't add to it. You always just keep the best shot, so residual firepower. So that shot was 3 firepower compared to the 7. Not as good. These guys are now under the final fire status, which means they fired their 2 shots, and the only thing they can fire at now is someone moving adjacent to them. So the Germans have finished moving. So now we enter the the defensive fire phase. So we just finished the movement phase where the defender can fire while the attacker moves. Then we enter the defensive fire phase where the defender can fire any units that did not fire during the movement phase or that still have the capability to fire. So this guy already fired his 2 shots, so has no capability, but none of these guys fired a shot. So they could potentially fire, but if I look at their lines of sight, they can't see anyone right now. So advancing fire phase, the defensive fire phase is basically skipped. I should pull this residual fire marker off because it's only used for movement phase. This marker is no longer needed now that the defensive fire phase is over. Now we're going to enter the advancing fire phase. That's where units that advanced can fire at half firepower. It's not just units that advanced, it's any unit that did not prep fire. No units prep fired, so any unit of the Germans can do advancing fire. Advancing fire is basically firing, but at half firepower. So if we look around, just like the Americans can't really see any Germans, the Germans can't really see any Americans except for the guys that were just fired on. So these guys can fire back. So they're also pinned, and if you see that, one of the first things it says is you fire at half firepower. So actually their firepower will be quartered because it's half for the advancing fire phase and halved again for being pinned. When you fire, multiple units can fire as a fire group. It's just a group of units firing. When they're stacked together, they have to fire as a fire group. The units adjacent to each other have the option of firing as a fire group. So if we add their firepowers together, 4 and 4 is 8, halved is 4, halved again is 2. The leader doesn't help, so we're just going to do an attack at the 2 level, right into these Americans. It traces through this orchard, but the Americans are in the open, so there's no other defensive benefit. They rolled a 6 on the 2 column. That is just barely a miss. So that's the only advancing fire we can do right now. The next phase is the rout phase, where broken units will flee, often outside of your control. There aren't any. Now we are in the advance phase. That's that phase I mentioned where units can advance 1 hex. So we're going to have these guys advance a hex, and they can't be fired on, even though the Americans see them now. Down here, definitely have 1 guy move forward. Now these Americans can see him, so it might be pretty bad, but he is in a stone building. Oh, I just realized he's pinned. pinned units. I don't know if you can see that, but it says no advance. So these guys are stuck. That's unfortunate. Go up to the first line infantry that came in this way. These guys will advance into the building. So initial strategy is good so far. Now these guys up here, they have several buildings to choose from. I'm thinking this one or this one. If they go to this one, you know, they have good vision off to that direction up here, but they have a blind spot from this building. They can, it's sort of the blind spot here. So the Americans could come down like this, but if they went here, of course the Americans are going to come in anyway, right? If they break, they will have to run away, and if they have to run away, I guess they don't have to run away, but if they chose to run away, they would have to cross open ground and might get cut down. So I'm inclined to just keep them there. The next phase is the close combat phase. That's when both attacker and defender share the same hex. None do here. So that is skipped. And it's also the last phase. At the end of the close combat phase, all pinned units are now unpinned. Could have been worse. The Germans did not get as far as they wanted to in the from the west side, but that's okay. At least they're not harmed. Next, we'll do the American turn one. Okay, turn one for the Americans. We start with the rally phase. Basically, we go through the exact same phases as the Germans. So the rally phase, there's no one to rally. There's no weapons to fix. Various other things you can do. There's nothing. But there are reinforcements. There's going to be approximately a platoon of Americans coming along anywhere along that northern border. And that's the rally phase. Now the prepare fire phase, or prep fire phase. That's where the attacker, which right now it's the Americans, can fire. These guys are all in the open, and if you fire, you forgo movement, so they're not going to fire. They need to get into cover. So now we go to the movement phase. We're going to need those reinforcements to come on, but I think we're going to focus on these guys in the center of town first. Just as when the Germans were moving, if the Americans move, they can be fired upon. It might seem like a good thing to do, and it might be, for them to move into here. But Germans, there's 2 squads here, and when you're adjacent, when you fire, you can double your firepower. So it could be a devastating attack. There's a stone building though, so maybe it's not going to be so bad. I think the first thing to do though, these guys can be seen by these guys, so they can hop right into this building and probably no one can see them do that. They could continue moving. That was 2 movement points, and they're with the leader, so they could go 6, but I don't think I want them to move here because there's multiple German squads down here that can shoot into there. It's possible these guys could see through that building. I bet they could. Over to here. Hard to say though. They're going to hold their fire because, you know, these Americans might be moving into the adjacent stone buildings. So as the Americans, I can choose whatever order I want to move these guys. So maybe I'll hold off on moving these guys because the reinforcements from the north perhaps might trigger these guys to fire. We'll see. So let's go to those reinforcements in the north. It's not a very good situation because of that German there. It may seem like there's 3 of them and only 1 of him, and so they can just rush him, but he can take multiple shots. One thing I should point out though is On your first shot, well, there's really no limitation. So let's just say they shot at this guy while he's here. Then if another American came in, he can kind of cruise back and forth all he wants, and they cannot shoot at him, even though they get a second shot, because your second shot has to be against someone of equal distance of your first shot, equal or less distance. So one strategy is probably you can send in someone as cannon fodder to take that first shot, and then let someone run by, avoiding the second shot. But I think I'm not going to do that. I think I want to get someone in this building to start trading pot shots with this guy. So he's going to come into this orchard, and then he'll advance into here in the advance phase. I'm probably not being aggressive enough, but we'll see. And these other two guys are going to do the old stack two squads with a leader. And I think they're going to take advantage of that blind spot over here. So if they come in here, pretty sure that guy can see them if they come into this wheat right here. But if they come into this woods, I'm pretty sure it's out of sight. And if it's not out of sight, it's I'm not sure enough of it to want to take the shot. I should point out that if you do a line of sight check to see if you see the guys, you have to take the shot, even if it's out of sight, and so you'll have wasted the shot. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3.5, 4.5, 5. They're still in that blind spot. This might not be good here, actually, because these guys down here could fire on them. You know, that might be okay though, because if I use these guys to take that fire, I should show you the guys that I'm talking about. The ones way down in this building. If they trigger him to fire, they might suffer horrible losses, or it might be a total miss. But then when these other American units wanted to move in, he would only be firing at half as what he would have been normally, so that might be a risk worth taking. His range is 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's just within normal range. They went 1, 2. These are 1.5, so that would be 3.5, 5. He has one movement point left, but can't use it. That's tempting as the German, putting on my German hat. It's very tempting to take that shot because they're not in the open, which would give them the Germans a bonus, but they are moving without assault movement, which is a bonus, and it's a stack. But I think I need to save my shot for that double firepower for someone coming in adjacent, which I would be firing on the 16 column, which looks pretty scary. So they're not going to fire, so these guys are done moving. So delaying the rest of these guys didn't really help. So what are they going to do? I could move this guy here, but I mean, see, I know there's going to be German reinforcements coming in from the east, so he could, try to keep them out of the battle by firing down these roads at them as they come in. I think let's see here. I think I'm just going to rush those Americans into those buildings one at a time. One's probably going to have a devastating shot, one a slightly less devastating shot. We'll see what we can do. Hopefully survive. So how about we'll do this guy first. He's going to go using, you have to declare it first. I almost didn't, using assault movement. So it's going to only be able to move one space. That gives him eliminates the negative modifier for moving without assault movement. So he's carefully moving in assault movement. This guy's gonna fire. 16 points. We got 4 plus 4 times 2 for adjacency with a -1 to the die roll. Plus 3 for stone building. No other modifiers. Okay, well that's good for the Americans. The worst possible roll. I was just temporarily checking my notes to see if rolling 2 6s has any other triggers. Basically, there's a few magical rolls that can trigger other things to happen, but not in this case. So he fired 16 firepower into that space. That means there's a residual firepower of 8. So that's not a place someone else wants to move into. He did his first firing, so we'll record that fact. Now, if an American moves in next to him in another space, he could still fire and it'll still be pretty devastating, but not 16. And that's what we're going to do. This guy's going to move in here. Also using assault movement. And he's going to fire. Much better. So you fire at half when you're taking your second shot. So that's an 8. I rolled a 6. 6 on the 8 plus 3 for the stone building is a pin task check. Oop, I need to subtract 1 for leadership though. Normal morale check. 10. And it's also doubles. That does not matter. So 10 is greater than 7, so he's going to break. I should point out that, well, 10 is not greater than the margin required to reduce quality. The scenario setup says it's 5, so I would have had to roll greater than 12 to reduce his quality. But another factor involved is his morale level has an underline. That means you're immune from quality reduction. But anyway, he is broken. Notice one little thing here. His morale actually goes up when he breaks. That's sort of a cultural stereotype, if you will, built into the game for Americans, that compared to equal quality Germans, they're more likely to break, but also more likely to rally. Each of the different, I guess, cultures or armies, whatever you want to call them, has its own little traits like that. So they're desperate. That means it's going to be tough to rally them. These Germans have taken their second attack, so marked final fire. They can only handle adjacent enemies now. So the last guy here is this guy. It's a half squad. Not sure what to do with him. I can move him into here and beef him up. I can move him into here to protect him a little bit. But I did forget that I need to add some residual firepower. So I guess he doesn't want to beef him up after all. He could move up here and, I don't know, try to get behind this guy. I think maybe he'll go in here on the advanced phase, and that's the way he's behind this guy. Adjacent to this guy, we'll just see. So he's going to move 1. So this guy could have fired on him across this X spine because he sees him, but he's not equal to or closer than these other guys, so he can't fire on him. So he's going to sit here. Okay, so that was the movement phase. Now for the defensive fire phase. That's where the Germans that did not fire but can fire can go for it. These guys, you know, they probably should have fired on these Americans. None of them looking at it. I didn't think they could see them. We're going to do it now. They don't get the modifiers, though, they would have had of the Americans moving. Well, that would have been assault movement, so doesn't matter. Playing a little loosey-goosey here. Going to do a little line of fire check here. Oh, the thread does catch the very corner of the building, so it is not in line of sight. So they fire and miss because it hits the corner of this building here. Okay, so I guess I made the right call to begin with. By the way, we're not in the movement phase anymore, so I can remove these markers here. So this guy can't fire because he's already fired. Here's a, no, can't see anyone there either. Defensive fire phase is over. Remove the final fire marker. Now advancing fire, those that did not prep fire, which there aren't any, can now fire on the attack at half firepower. It's too bad this guy broke, because all three of these guys can see this guy, him along the hex spine, and so I could have formed a 3-squad fire group to attack here, but since this guy broke, I can't, because all units in a fire group have to be adjacent, so I'm going to have to take single shots, which I will. I think we'll start with, I'm not sure which is better. I think we'll start with the half squad. He's firing at half firepower, so that's 1.5 rounded down to 1. Defender has a building plus 3. I rolled an 8. Nope. Now this guy is a much better chance. 7, cut in half, but then doubled for adjacency, so it's a 7. Into a plus 3 building. Ooh, devastating, maybe. So, he was attacking on the 6 column. He rolled a 3. Plus 3 for the stone building. That's a 1 MC. That stands for a morale check with a plus 1 die roll modifier. So the leader cannot, he has to roll plus 1. You got a 7, plus 1 is 8. He's pinned. Not too bad. If he had broken, that would have been pretty bad, because not only would his other guys not benefit from his leadership modifier, they would have also been disturbed by their leader breaking, and they would have to take an additional pin check after doing so, their morale check. So now we'll go for these guys. You know, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe I'm pretty sure that even though he's pinned, he can use his leadership. He's laying down, yelling at them to take cover. Rolled a 7. Minus 1 for the leadership, plus 1 for the morale check. So that's a 7. They're pinned as well. I'm trying to remember if I used the plus 1 on the original die roll for the leader. Oh well, I made a mistake if I forgot it. This next guy, ooh, he rolled an 11. Plus 1 for the morale check, minus 1 for the leader. That's an 11. He breaks. And not only does he break, but his quality is going to degrade. So I'm going to have to turn him into the box of dead troops and replace him with a second line quality unit. And then flip him over. He's broken. He's desperate. These guys go on top because they're not broken. He's not pinned either, but you can't be broken and pinned, I believe, so it's a pretty big stack there. Well, that was good on the Americans' part. Let's see, can the Americans fire on anyone else? You know, there's no point in wasting shots during this phase, this advanced fire phase. Actually, I should say, don't be afraid of wasting shots during the advanced fire phase. There's no negative to it. I'm going to see if these guys could also see into there. I don't think so. Nope, clips this building here. Okay, the Americans in the north cannot see anyone. That's that part of the turn. Next is the rout phase. Okay, we haven't done this yet. The rout phase, anyone with a desperation morale marker, which we have a few. I'm just going to set these guys off to the side for the moment. Has to rout. And that means getting the heck away from the enemy and hiding or retreating. The attacker goes first, so that's the Americans at this moment. What you have to do is you have to go away from enemy units. Since this guy is adjacent to some unbroken Germans, he's got to bail. And this guy's adjacent to unbroken American units, so he has to bail too. So what you do is you pick the closest building or woods to you and have to move towards it. You have 6 movement factors to do that. So these are the closest, but they're adjacent to enemy units, so he can't pick those. This is 2 away, this is 2 away. What's interesting is, let's say this wasn't available and only this was available. This guy cannot actually see this guy, so he can't take this guy into account when picking buildings not next to enemy units. So he would have to go there, and then as soon as he got there, he'd have to immediately, well, he'd have to either keep moving or die. I forget. If we hit that situation, I'll have to look it up. So it looks like my only option for routing is over to this leader, which actually might be good, except I have to cross open terrain. You know, let's see. He can get there without anyone seeing him. If someone sees him, they can perform interdiction fire and basically, you know, harm him. There's some ways to get around that, but he's gonna go. He's gonna go 1, 2, 3. So he's in there. That's good because he's with a decent leader that could possibly rally him. Now the German's gonna rout. This might not be as good here. I'm gonna just throw him on top here just to clear things up a bit. So he needs to pick the closest building or woods. Looks like he has 2 choices here. This building or this building. Clearly this one, it's not good. It's gonna have to cruise through the open with Americans nearby. This one looks decent. There are Americans in range though, way up here. They're pretty far out of range. So one thing he can do is just go for it and possibly be interdicted. Another thing is he could just do what they call a low crawl. He could just crawl out of the building into this street, maybe hugging some gutter, and no one can fire on him if he does that. But now he's in the open. It's harder to rally when you're in the open. But I think he's just going to run to this building up here and potentially be interdicted. So let's do that. He's going to run out here. He's going to suffer interdiction. I need to look that up. Well, he does not suffer interdiction. The reason is it only happens when you're in normal range of a unit. These guys' range is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's just out of the range. So that is the best move. He can then move into this building. He does not suffer interdiction from this guy because he's no longer in the open. Once you're in a building, you can continue moving through additional buildings and woods. I don't really see a point in doing that at the moment though, so he's just gonna hang right here. If he was a leader here, I'd have it, like maybe here, I'd have a different story, but that's what he's doing. So the next phase is the advance phase. So now that I did that, it's possible I made a mistake because someone's going to advance right next to him. Hard to say. Do I want these Americans down here to advance? I don't think so. Do I want these guys to advance? That is tempting. These Germans are pinned. There's a leader and a 4 firepower unit in there. This American could advance into that space and engage them in close combat. I think that's what you want to do with these Americans because they have very high firepower. They're advancing into close combat. We're going to mark that with a close combat marker to remind us that there's basically close quarters and possibly hand-to-hand fighting going on there. This half squad, you know, I want to put him here because then next turn he could perhaps engage him in close combat, although there's probably going to be some fighting going on here. Or you can even hop into this close combat if it's still going on. So we'll advance. The Americans to the north. This guy's moving forward as planned. This guy's going to scooch a little closer to that building, trying to get in position to attack the guy interdicting reinforcements. That's the advance phase. Close combat phase. So we have one spot with close combat. Here we'll focus in on it. I'm going to unravel the stack a little bit. We have the American. We have German squad with his leader. They're pinned in that space. So when you advance into close combat in a building or woods, you have to roll 2 dice to see if there's an ambush. 1 die is for the defender and 1 for the attacker. If someone has a roll 3 greater than or less than, I forget, than the other guy, he ambushes him. So we'll use white for the Germans. Gonna roll. That's good. I don't have to go look up that rule because neither one is 3 from the other. So there's no ambush. Ambush would convey some positive modifier to whoever did the ambushing. Next we say which groups of units are going to attack which other groups of units. In this case it's pretty simple. The leader has to go with the squad, so we consider that one group, and the American only has one group. So and that makes it easy. They're going to attack each other. So I have to look up on the close combat table, and maybe I'll show that. We'll do the Americans first. Basically, you calculate a ratio. So the Americans have a firepower of 7. The Germans have a firepower of 4, but you can add your leader to it, so that's 5. Then you calculate a ratio. And you know what? The Germans are pinned, so I need to just quickly make sure that pinning... Oh wait, I see it. It's right here on the chart. Pinning is still half firepower. So actually the Germans are 2.5 rounded down to 2. So the American ratio is 7 to 2, which is a 3 to 1 ratio right here. So they need to roll 8 or less to kill the Germans, like completely just wipe them out. No breaking squads here. That's good for the Americans. Now, since there was no ambush situation, even if the Germans are completely wiped out, they still have a chance to damage the Americans because the combat's simultaneous. So here comes the American roll. We got 4 and doubles. Oh, interesting. Okay. So the 4 completely just kills the Germans, all dead. But since it's doubles during, let's see, a multi-man counter, close combat die roll, there's a possible leader creation, okay? So let's remember that after this. Next, the Germans are going to attack the Americans, even though they're dead, it's simultaneous. The Germans were attacking at a 2 against a 7, so that's 1 to 3.5. So the closest to 1 to 3.5 is 1 to 4. You always take the worst. So they need to roll 3 or less to kill the Americans. Got an 8. Nope. So those Germans are dead. It's pretty devastating for the Germans. Maybe rushing into there at the start of the scenario was not what I wanted to do. Seems like a good idea though. Their other squad is broken and running away. So possible leader creation. Let's see what we're doing here. There's a chart down here. I think my notes might be wrong. Not doubles. No leader creation. If I rolled an original 2, there might be a leader. Okay, well, that's fine. Close combat phase is over. It's now the Germans' turn next.